Good morning, everyone. Oops, got to start recording. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. Today is Friday, July 18th, 2025. And oh my gosh, the streaming service was not working and then it was working. And so I'm not sure if it's going to work this morning, but it says it's working right now. So apologies if things are messed up. I'm recording the whole thing, so I'll upload as usual. Apologies if there's anything weird about it. It looks nominal right now, so apologies. Anyway, we do not have a list of projects, so we won't be building pipelines. Didn't Carney campaign on pipelines? Wasn't there something he was talking about that he wanted to accomplish? Chief among them, pipelines will get big projects built. Didn't he and Danielle Smith have a whole conversation about the projects that they were going to do? And Danielle Smith says, this is more engagement than we've had with a prime minister in 10 plus years. And we're actually talking about projects and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, Mark Carney put out a video yesterday saying, oh, we've got ideas. There's so many ideas, but nothing on a short list, nothing on a long list, no list to share at all, really. So please stop asking. It's making things uncomfortable. Epstein list apparently will get released after all. And there's a letter released by the New York Times attributed to Trump, but it's the most ridiculous thing ever. So we're gonna look at that closer to the end of the show today. Charlie, we're gonna start with Charlie. She got her medication, so the government in BC backed down, and there was a big cabinet shuffle, and people are upset about the health minister. And I don't think the health minister got shuffled out of her position. I don't know if it's a male or female, so apologies about that. But I just don't know who's in the health minister position. So I don't know their name or anything about them, unfortunately. But it's interesting to see that all of this happened, the public backlash and all of the rest, and then a cabinet shuffle happens. And, oh yeah, we'll leave them in place. So we'll talk about that a bit later. Carney's conflicts of interest and blind trust are a concern, and plane hijacking in British Columbia and other crimes. And so we've got a little bit of a crime beat thing to talk about later on as well. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we're going to talk about Charlie. And Adam says, update, we did it. The government backed down in British Columbia. Charlie's journey, the nightmare is over, says Charlie's mom. I just spoke to Minister Osborne. Charlie's government funding for her treatment has been restored. She will receive infusions for as long as she needs them. I'm beyond grateful to all the beautiful humans that have moved mountains for our precious girl. The love, support, generosity, compassion, kindness, and devotion are unmatched. I will be thankful for the rest of my life. We love you, Charlie. So yesterday I was saying what a terrible thing to do to somebody, even threatening removal of this. I mean, now all of a sudden you're on the hook for however much that costs. And as a parent, you'll do whatever you have to do to make that money, right? Like there's no question. And so it's a very interesting situation, all of this rolling out. And I'm glad the government backed down. It's a horrific thing to do to people. I think they should sue. I think they should have, and even though it's got a good outcome, I think they should smack the government around. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what the government is doing. They hate us and they hate everything about us. And it shows. And I'm glad that they backed down, but they only backed down because of the backlash. They didn't back down because they're nice. They didn't back down because they have humanity. They backed down because they were worried about pitchforks and people showing up at their house with them, right? That's a problem. Here is Tamara Litch, and she's responding to Mark Carney, who's saying, we don't have any projects ready or anything like that. When I was campaigning on that and saying we were going to get started right away, I was lying, like I was lying about everything else, right? And Mark Carney, every single day of the campaign, lied about something and was found out about the lie. And then the next day came out and lied about something else. It's crazy. So here's Mark Carney. Canada Proud says, in other words, we're not getting any new infrastructure. Like, this is real life? Yep, sure is. Here we go.
Now, in that discussion, we will, of course, discuss, as some of you did yesterday, the One Canadian Economy Act, and particularly the Building Canada Act, what it means, how we bring it to life in the right way. And I think that's the first point I really want to emphasize, is that this act is only a way of starting a conversation and starting a process. And we define that process going forward. But what it could do is enable Canada to build big things that will connect and transform our national economy. Create great careers, not just jobs, but careers for the people that we serve, and provide the resources for health, for education, and social services that our people deserve. It's about giving ourselves more than any foreign government can ever take away.
Isn't that a Miley Cyrus song? I can love myself better than you can. He said could, right? Like this whole thing, the bill really could do this. It could It could make us millions. It could make us millions, Karen. Right? Like, I don't think so, Mark Carney. It could also be a big boondoggle. It could fail. Nothing could happen. We might not get anything built because of the other policies that you refuse to address, and instead double down and triple down on this new bureaucracy you're building with this bill. I'm not a believer. I think that Mark Carney is stalling for time, and we shouldn't allow him to. He campaigned on being a man with a plan, and it looks like the plan is bankrupt Canada, question mark, question mark, question mark, profit on the ashes, I guess. I'm not sure, but that seems to me the plan from where I sit. Mario is responding to this news. It's a Substack, The Bureau. It's Sam Cooper's outfit. Democracy Watchdog says Prime Minister Carney's ethics screen actually hides his participation in conflicted investments. Mario gives us a little bit of color on that. So how does he do all of that? And the quote is, Prime Minister Carney's so-called blind trust isn't blind at all, the watchdog said. He knows exactly what he put in. So where is his money? He chose his own trustee. He can instruct them not to sell and can receive updates at any time. On top of that, he owns stock options in Brookfield that he can't sell for years, guaranteeing that he stays tethered to these corporate interests. The stock options thing is very interesting because, like, when you are a CEO of a company, sometimes part of your package, part of your compensation is stock options, and you get those stock options and they're vested, and you have to own them for a certain time before you can sell them, things like that. And it works as a retirement, kind of an additional building block to your retirement portfolio. And so that is a part and parcel. He can't remove those conflicts. It's not possible, right? He has to own that stuff for a while if he wants the full compensation package. So it is concerning, and nobody seems to care. So that's weird, right? Like, that's a weird thing to, like, this is bad. Nobody would usually have this position with these conflict of interest. We shouldn't tolerate this. Oh, well, I guess we'll see how it goes. And I mean, I feel powerless. Like, what are we going to do? Like, the Conservatives don't seem to be interested in doing anything. The minority parliament doesn't seem to be interested in doing anything. And everybody looks at Mark Carney like he's the smartest guy in the room, despite him saying pretty stupid things most of the time. So Denise Batters is responding to this Globe and Mail piece. Montreal's Trudeau Airport to undergo $10 billion renovation over the next decade. So spending in Quebec, spending in Montreal. Now that's jobs. Carney would call this investing. I would call this buying votes. And Grace says at the very least, Liberals are buying votes. Batters says the Carney Liberal government will probably use this highly inflated amount to count towards their 5% of GDP for NATO defense spending. How many contractors with big Liberal ties will benefit? Yeah, this seems like, and Quebec, Montreal is, it's well known for the construction grift. There's a whole mafia. There's all sorts of ways to take $10 billion of government money, deliver something like the Gardiner, have it be 6 inches more narrow than it is on paper. And what happened to all that concrete and all that money? Because the Gardiner is a long, long, big highway, right? So, like, people grift, people steal, and people find out 30 years later, what are you going to do? 40 years later, 50 years later, what are you going to do? Right? So holy smoke. And the Liberals buy votes. And this is all money for the Liberals buying votes. Investment in Canada. Do you believe that it's an investment in Canada? Or is it a big giveaway to Liberal cronies? Why not both, says Carney. Danielle Smith says pulling Alberta out of supply management is worth considering. Canada's contentious supply management system could face major challenge from within after Alberta opens the door. Canada's dairy and poultry supply management regime could face a major challenge from within, with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith saying she could consider the province exiting the quota system. Smith said at a town hall in Red Deer, Alberta, that she found the idea of the province opting out of supply management intriguing. Quote, creating our own Alberta version of supply management, maybe as a pathway to a market system, and maybe just because it would stick our finger in the eye of Quebec, might be something we want to do a little consultation on, said Smith. Smith noted that Alberta's share of the Canada-wide quota for dairy and egg production allotted under supply management falls below its share of the population. Her comments came after one of the attendees, Lee Eddy, a resident of Red Deer County, said earlier in the evening that pulling out of the system would be one way for Alberta to grab the attention of their Laurentian power brokers in Ottawa. The town hall was being held as part of Smith's Alberta Next panel, struck to consider tactics for enhancing Alberta's sovereignty. If we really want to make Eastern politicians have to change their underwear, we should remove our supply management from the Canadian system, said Eddy. Quebec producers hold 37% of Canada's total milk quota, with Ontario producers holding 32%, according to Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Producers in the two provinces have exerted considerable clout over politicians, giving their concentration in certain ridings, Ontario and Quebec. So I can see a long time ago people saying Alberta can have oil, and sure, Ontario and Quebec can have dairy. But what happened was the dairy farmers turned that into political power, and the oil producers got bilked for billions, honestly. And it screwed them. And so, I mean, the tactic has failed, has backfired. So Alberta, you got to do something. Anyway, Alberta producers hold just short of 9%, despite the province representing more than 11% of the national population. So that's supply management, 9% of supply management. So they have to import milk into Alberta. Do you actually have to import milk in Alberta? Let me know in the comments, Albertans. Do you really? I had no idea. That's wild. It's like out east, and I can't believe the price of milk out east. Is it over $10 for 4 liters yet? Or is it over? It was almost $10 when I was out there. Maybe it was more than $10. But you had to buy cartons of 2-liter milk to get 4 liters, which you can buy in a bag for $6.50, $6.25 in Ontario at this point. But it used to be $5.50, and the supply management stuff is driving up our prices. In Kentucky, you can get the same amount of milk, 4 liters of milk, a gallon of milk, for $2.50. No lie. Even after conversion, that's a great price. Half price. Unbelievable. Food professor says, do you think Canada should maintain its commitment to supply management in the face of growing geopolitical tensions with countries like the United States? And after 1,726 votes and the final results, 8.3% say yes, 86.6% say no, and 5% say they don't know. So I think that's interesting that a lot of people are for getting rid of supply management because it seems to have outlived its usefulness, and it seems to be a political machine more than a thing that helps Canadians eat effectively, right? So I think that's interesting to say the least, and we'll see if anything happens. I mean, if somebody's going to get a deal that moves this, why not Donald Trump, right? I think sometimes he says that, and he's like, why not me? I'll buy Greenland and I'll buy Canada. Why not? Panama Canal too. He's got the Panama Canal. Joss says, full cabinet shuffle below. Gary Begg is out. And so I don't know if Gary Begg, I don't think he was the former minister. I'm sorry that I didn't do the research on this one. It's very busy in the summertime, which is why I'm streaming at like 10:30, right? So full cabinet shuffle. Ravi, well, I'm not going to go through all of this because it will mean very little to most people, I think, other than people in BC and just going through this. But I think the crux of it is a lot of people are saying if they didn't get rid of the health minister, this NDP government is cooked. And that's kind of the consensus that I was seeing before I saw this list. And as I've said, I haven't had a chance to confirm who's where, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty interesting what's going on, and we'll see the fallout. Do you think, like, we just had a BC election, it was stolen, and Rustad didn't do really much to fix all of that, and so he seemed to be happy with being the opposition in a razor-thin situation, which is also, did the BC NDP have a majority? I think possibly they have a majority. Anyway, it's a weird situation. Do you think we're going to see an election on the short term or not? I don't know. I have no idea. Here's the Justice Centre, and they say 2 courageous Ontario teachers are standing up for the charter freedoms of expression, religion, and conscience. Nicole and Matt Alexander were suspended and then fired for not celebrating and affirming LGBT issues. Now they're taking action with lawyers provided by the Justice Centre. So that's interesting, and I find it like good for the Justice Centre for standing up. I've talked with people, and it was possibly a way to get me to back down because, I don't know, talked with lawyers about the education system previously and about bringing a case to protect kids that I knew, et cetera, et cetera. And I was basically told the government has basically full carte blanche. You know, they can do what they want with the curriculum, and they can do that. They can do this and that. And the court is going to side with the government because the government represents, you know, science, and they seem very believable, whereas, you know, you're not so believable. And I'm not so believable, but my position would be difficult to prove, et cetera, et cetera. And I was skeptical, but at the same time, I've said before, if you take on a court case, that thing becomes your life, right? And it is all-encompassing almost, especially something like that, especially if you're going up against the government, right? Or if you're going up against like the city or something like that, and you live in the city, there could be unintended consequences if you don't understand what's going on. And so yeah, it's a very, very concerning situation. Good for these guys for standing up. It's very difficult to navigate this kind of stuff. I think that the education system's cooked. I think the education system's cooked completely. I think it is designed to churn out non-thinking automatons and people who will be happy with sitting around and having people give them cricket flour bread. You know what I mean? Like, it's a situation where I am very concerned because each of the small problems or the manifestations of the small problems indicate a much larger problem, and nobody wants to really address that larger problem because that would involve undoing a lot of the stupidity of the last 30, 40 years, 50 years of education, and maybe more. And they don't want to do that because that would be somehow dangerous, or there's a lot of resistance to that. And so how do you fix it if nobody wants to fix it? And that's a very concerning situation. So I'm glad that people are taking this on, but I'm skeptical that the system, I'm skeptical that we can fix it, right? I'm skeptical. I hope we can. I hope I'm wrong about it. I hope we can fix it. CBC News says multiple Canadian contractors that have helped build a sprawling taxpayer-supported electric vehicle battery plant in southwestern Ontario allege they haven't been paid for millions of dollars worth of work. Court records show. Ruh-roh, everybody. There's all of these costs with these bankrupt battery plants. And how are we going to pay for them? You and me. We are the ones left holding the bag when this all goes tits up. And it's going tits up, everyone. So hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they've got lots of money for the FIFA guy or gal in the FIFA office. Bob Mackin says exclusive former Trudeau Liberal candidate was paid almost $500,000 last year to run Vancouver City Hall's FIFA World Cup office. So, wow, $500,000. That's a lot of money, right? I'm sure I could run the FIFA office, right? No problem. Unbelievable. I mean, I wonder if that's her only job, or if she's also like a city councilor somewhere, or she's also doing like 2 or 3 other where she gets per diems or sits on a board and gets $100,000 to sit on the board and things like that, right? There are all sorts of those kind of jobs, and they go to insiders and people who have pulled the party line and done and said the right things to the right people at the right time. You know what I'm saying? Very interesting. Here's Amy Ham, and she says, I would be really good at this job because I know exactly what type of content they want, brainless woke propaganda, and I could write it in my sleep. So Ottawa, Ontario, the Canada Council for the Arts is looking for a content creation advisor. So that'd be a fun job, right? Amy would be great at it. But unfortunately, from the posting, this competition may have a hiring priority for Indigenous people, Black people, racialized people, deaf people, and people with disabilities. Can you have, like, does selective deafness count? Because I've been called selectively deaf, right? Like, it manifests at the most inconvenient times. I'll tell you what. People with disabilities, the general disabilities. So if I qualify for one of those stickers, then I'm like at the top of the list. All right, buddy. No problem. Give me a minute. Gender LGBTQ plus gender diverse communities. So communists, you have to be communist and you have to like the same sex. So weird, right? Like, that's terrible for the government of Canada to say that in a job posting. Candidates belonging to these equity deserving groups who wish to be considered must self-identify. Great. Is women? Yep. I was going to say, is women in there? Yep. So no problem. I am a self-identified Black, deaf, occasionally deaf woman with disabilities, general. I've got the sticker. So, right? No problems. I'm at the top of the list. I could do this job. We have been talking on the Kitchen Table Talks for a while. Noel's been monitoring some bread, and I've got a loaf of bread. I'm going to write the date on it, because it was bread we were eating up until yesterday. I'm going to write the date on it, and we're going to watch it not mold for a long period of time. We're going to see how long it takes to mold or just turn to cardboard. And if none of those things happen, we're going to start making our own bread, I think, because it's very strange. Here's this woman. She says, listen, I bought this bread at the store to feed our chickens. Well, I'll let her tell the story. Here we go.
Let me show y'all something. Do y'all see the date on that bread?
Get down.
April 17th, 20. We have a box of bread that we give to the chickens sometimes. There is not a moldy piece of bread in this bag from April 25th of this year. Look at that. When I make our bread for us to eat, we have to eat it within a few days or it molds. This has been months. Food for thought, guys.
Yeah, weird, right? You're feeding that to your chickens? What is wrong with you, lady? But yeah, no, wild stuff, right? And I wonder, because last year, 2 years ago, well, 10 years ago, Iceland had, this is like from the last McDonald's in Iceland, and they have a glass container over it, and it's a cheeseburger with bread and French fries, and it's pristine. It looks like you could eat it right now, like heat it up in the microwave, and bingo, bango, bongo, you got yourself a Happy Meal, right? And so that's concerning, but I thought, oh, well, that's just fast food. No, it turns out it's all food. I guess it's all food, right? So my friend of mine said, everything in the center of the grocery store is all about preservatives. It's all got preservatives in it because it's all about shelf life, right? And I said, not chocolate cereal though, right? And she said, yeah, not chocolate cereal. So whew, dodged that bullet. But everything in the grocery store is fundamentally different, right? It looks real good, but it might be like buying Benson and Hedges or Belmont's or right? De Maurier, all of these cigarettes, it might just be the same thing. So, but I reject that premise because chocolate cereal is delicious. So I miss smoking. National Post, the invasion. Let's talk about the invasion ongoing. National Post says Canada pauses permanent residency sponsorship applications for parents and grandparents. That was January 3rd of this year, because in January, the polls showed that the Liberals would be handing over government to Pierre Poilievre. Now that they've won and everybody's sick and tired of an election, CTV News is reporting thousands of Canadians to start receiving invitations to apply to sponsor parents and grandparents. Yay. Why? What? Hold on a second. They're being told you guys should take advantage right now and have your parents and grandparents come here. Tracy says that should fix up the 17-hour ER waits and housing crisis. Good job, Canada. Yay. Thousands of Canadians to start receiving invitations to apply to sponsor grandparents and parents. So bring your parents to Canada. We desperately want to pack them into our hospitals and kill them with MAID. Murderous country. What a wild thing to experience, right? Rupa is responding to this too. She says it's like they're deliberately mocking us. Why on earth would you invite elderly people to live in Canada? Folks who've never worked or paid taxes in the country, just to strain an already collapsing healthcare system? You mad people, right? It's like we're watching a movie and the bad guy won and the bad guy's just making things worse and laughing maniacally like that guy yesterday from this is transparent and democratic process. Ha 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 ha. Right? Like he's just laughing as he does each worse thing. Holly Doan says the number of refugee claimants and illegal immigrants attempting to enter Canada has fallen sharply since U.S. President Donald Trump took office. Numbers here. So isn't that weird? Biden's in office and the invasion is just unchained. Everybody's moving everywhere all the time and nobody can get a handle on it. And oh my gosh, these people have rights and we should put them up in hotels and we should give them drugs and food and phones and all sorts of other stuff. And now all of a sudden we turn it off. And it's turned off, and they actually could turn it off. Isn't that crazy? Because they said they couldn't do it. They said it wasn't possible. But it turns out it is possible. So isn't that a problem? Shouldn't we hold those people accountable? Why aren't we holding those people accountable? Same reason we're not holding the COVID people accountable, unfortunately. Rupert is a British MP, and this is, again, part of the invasion. Here's a photo of this guy who showed up in a person's backyard, and he says he just got lost. But here's Rupert. He says, "This is disturbing. I've been sent this footage as evidence. It is verified. Late last night, this man was found trespassing on a small farm. The owner believed he was about to break into the house. He had climbed over a 7-foot gate and approached the house. He was caught by the understandably distressed homeowner at the door of their home. The man spoke virtually no English and obviously had no justification to be there. Police were called immediately and they arrived promptly. His reason to the police for his action was confusion. He just wanted a car ride home. When questioned by the police, the homeowner explained what had happened and described the intruder as a refugee who wanted to go back to his luxury hotel. At this point, the police cautioned the owner and said he was on very shaky grounds for talking that way and that he should be careful what he said. Remember, this is verified on video, okay? The implication was clearly that he was the one going to be arrested if he continued. The police then removed the intruder. They said they were taking him back to the town where he asked to go. The homeowners believed it was implied that no further action was being taken against the man. I've shared this with permission. Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to have this man break into your property late at night? The police arrived and implied that you're a racist. England, 2025. I'll be contacting the relevant police force asking for clarification. We need mass deportations. Illegal migrants need to be forcibly removed from our country. In my entire life, I've never been more disgusted with the state of our country. Yeah, I mean, it's not just happening in Canada. It's not just happening in Canada. There's an election going on in Canada in Battle River Crowfoot, and the leader of the Conservative Party is running in that riding. And this is just interesting news that I thought was interesting. When the powers that be have an effective person placed in a spot where they're doing work, just like on a chessboard, if you've got a rook or a bishop that's holding a piece at bay, your piece can't move because my thing's here, and if you move, I'm going to take that thing, or I'm going to checkmate you or whatever. Then they're doing a good job, right? You're doing a job while I work on this part of the board, so you keep that person tied up and at bay while I do this. And so in that spirit, Dave says Jenny Brian is an advisor to the Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre, Sarah Fisher said in a brief statement, adding that she remains the leader's proxy at national council meetings. So despite calls for change, Pierre Poilievre's campaign manager keeps an advisory role. And interesting, right? Why do they keep losing? Because they keep putting Liberals in important positions. And, well, why do they keep losing? Because the elections are rigged. That's why they keep losing, honestly. If we're speaking honestly, and we might as well. Police on Guard for Thee is talking about COVID. And so this is kind of COVID-y news, which is good news, but takes far too long. COVID happened in 2021, and they were trying to lock us down into a 15-minute society with vaccine passports and all sorts of nonsense that were completely unnecessary. And they knew it. And we should deal with that, but we don't. But Police on Guard for Thee says a human rights tribunal has ordered Shoppers Drug Mart to pay compensation in the amount of $10,000 in a case surrounding COVID mask mandates. A ruling from the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario ordered Mohammed Drugs, which operates a Shoppers Drug Mart pharmacy in Mississauga, to pay Kimberly Clark $10,000 for discrimination based on her disability. The case stems from a September 21 incident where Ms. Clark, who suffers with asthma, visited the pharmacy while experiencing breathing difficulties. She was there to fill a prescription for her Ventolin inhaler, explaining her situation and asking for it to be expedited. Ms. Clark lowered her mask due to her symptoms, prompting immediate complaints from other customers. Despite informing staff of her condition, she stated that she was met with indifference and hostility. According to evidence, the pharmacy assistant failed to expedite her prescription or alert the manager about her breathing issues, contrary to the store's policy accommodating individuals with medical exemptions from mask wearing. The situation escalated further when the manager confronted her, dismissing her explanation and insisting that she wear a mask, which led to a heated exchange. Ms. Clark was ultimately escorted out and banned from the store, an action the HRTO deemed a violation of the Ontario Human Rights Code. Adjudicator Karen Mason's decision highlighted the pharmacy's failure to accommodate Ms. Clark's disability, awarding her $10,000 for injury to her dignity, feelings, and self-respect. The situation unfolded during we should abolish human rights tribunals, and people shouldn't be allowed to ban you from stores for not wearing masks and things like that. That should all be a non-starter. But this, I'm glad that she got some kind of justice, but this is not the vehicle for justice. And it's very suspect. This whole thing is very suspect. The Human Rights Tribunal. I think that there's a better way to solve this problem, and not one that can be ideologically turned. What if I hurt somebody's dignity, feelings, and self-respect? Am I going to have to give them $10,000? No. I have a right to self-expression, and if that hurts your feelings, get stronger, buddy, because the world's only a hard place. It's not nice. And so if there's weird things about you that you feel weird about, get right with it, because nobody's going to coddle you for the rest of your life. Okay. So I have a huge issue with this. While I think that the person who got $10,000 probably deserves some kind of compensation, while I think that she was in the right and the business owner was wrong, I have a huge problem with the Human Rights Tribunal and everything they stand for, because the whole thing is not about human rights. It's about ideological bullshit dressed up as law, and it's effing well not. So I'll get off my soapbox and return to the tweet. The situation unfolded during the heightened tensions of the COVID-19 pandemic and the mandates that followed. When mask policies sparked widespread debate, people were given the ability to seek exemptions when justified. Nobody gave exemptions. You had to take the exemption. If you asked for permission during COVID-19, absolutely nobody would give it to you. And in fact, they would imply you're a racist monster if you dared to question what was going on with COVID. Nobody was going to give you an exemption. I got hung up on by my doctor when I called up and asked about problems with the COVID shot that I've been found to be right about and she's been found to be wrong about. She fired me as a patient. You can listen to that on Odyssey if you go and check out my channel on Odyssey and just type in doctor under my content. That'll bring it up. But the whole thing is false to pretend that the madness of COVID-19 was justified or okay. It wasn't, right? So the whole thing was insane. The whole thing was insane, and we should not tolerate it. But I'm glad that she got some kind of compensation. Moving on. Here's this. This is funny. Sarah Hoffman is I think she's the health critic, the NDP health critic, which is hilarious. She was possibly a health minister in when this is in Alberta, right? I think it's Alberta. When the NDP were in, was she a minister? I hope not, but it's possible. Anyway, she is telling everybody how to be healthy, and that's a bridge too far for me. Sarah says, Alberta has more measles cases than the entire US. They're testing with PCR tests. Nope. That's a hard no for me, dog. This outbreak was preventable. It's made up. It's made up or manufactured in the same way they manufactured COVID, which was just the flu. But the UCP is ignoring health experts and putting lives at risk. We need action now. Bull poop. And morbidly obese women, says Van City News, lecturing you on health matters. Another huge NDP fail. Yep. Absolutely true. And I don't have any kind of faith in any of the people who are leading health in the country because we're so far away from reality. And the doctors are trained to do what they're told more than they are to diagnose and listen to the patient. The system is corrupt, and it probably shouldn't continue, right? But I mean, it is going to continue, so it's unfortunate. Hopefully we get back to healthcare rather than pharmacare, I guess. Here is a little bit of Danielle Smith. This is Alberta separatism stuff, and Bonnie says, constitutional questions. It's good to see this subject being addressed in the Alberta Next initiative because that's the underlying issue of concerns in Canada. This is from the Edmonton Town Hall that took place on July 16th. And these clips are talking about Alberta separatism and independence and just the practical stuff of all of that. And I think that it's worthwhile spending some time on it. I think that it's interesting, the conversations around it. And I still don't think that UCP being the driver of it is appropriate. I think that it has to be driven by the citizens. And I think when the citizens replace the government, the UCP will be irrelevant because the UCP will have nothing to do with the new governance of Alberta. Now, if those people want to run under the new structure, then that's perfectly fine. I'm sure that people will want to have strong leaders who understand what's going on. But UCP can't represent separation in Alberta. And that was one of the questions here, and they kind of dodge it as well. They can't represent that because UCP is fundamentally within a united Canada. So again, there are Alberta separatists who have me blocked. I don't think that they understand my position. I support you, Alberta. I want you to get what you want. I'm just worried that if you try and do it through UCP and the Canadian government, they're going to screw you because they hold all the cards. So anyway, it's unfortunate that people have blocked me about it. And I'd love to talk. If you think I'm wrong, come on my show and we'll chat about it. It'd be great. It would be wonderful content. I'm sure we'd have lots to talk about because I don't live out west. And I'm just looking from my garage here in Ontario, right? I could see Russia from my house. So I'm just telling you what I think. But if people on the ground view it differently, then I would love to have that conversation. But from here, it just seems like there's so many opportunities to have it. Even a winning vote, a winning population vote, snatched away by details and other bad faith actions by people who would make more in the current configuration than they would in a configuration that will ultimately lead to the complete destruction of Canada. Because if Alberta leaves, then Canada's done. Canada might be done anyway. Quite honestly, I have very little faith in Mark Carney's ability to navigate Donald Trump's takeover attempts at this point in time. So, but we'll see. Anyway, with that, we have to say goodbye to the stream. So thanks for watching.